Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. It has been a very strange time for me because I am experimenting with all kinds of videography techniques and I'm a perfectionistic mess about it. So thank you all who have newly subscribed. I'm trying to get better at video making. Today's video, I wanted to talk about relationship compatibility. Like, what is the best match for an INFJ? I have gotten a lot of questions about this recently since I put out my last relationship video. I do have some ideas about good matches and matches that can be kind of challenging for the INFJ. So I thought I would expand on that video a little more. I already have an INFJ relationship video where I talk about relationship chemistry. I wanted to add some more details about things that I find really pair well with us and what could be really difficult. So I see relationships through a few lenses in that there's like attracts like, where you see like how you harmonize well and the places that you're very similar. And then there's opposites attract type chemistry, where you might balance each other out and there's just all these differences that might actually pair you well. And then one other way that I see things through is through essence. Like, there's this attraction that you have towards a person and you can't really put it to words, but it's just their essence that you find really attractive. I wanted to go through each of the personality types that I currently have in my own life and like people that I've had really close relationships with, what I found worked really well with them and things that I found kind of challenging. I just want to walk through each of the personality types that I think are pretty standard, like typical pairings for the INFJ. Just see them through that lens of like where we're similar, where we're different, and also their unique essence. I'd like to start with INTJs because they're weirdly the personality that I have the most of in my life. I chose engineering for a reason, and I think it's because there's so many INTJs in that field. I really like this personality type because they're very unconventional in the way that they think. And I think INFJs are really drawn to that in them. They don't care what people think about them. When I think of an INTJ, like their unique essence, I see it as being sharp like coffee and cool like a mint. There's just something about them that is, I don't know, I don't want to say bitter, but it's like they do have this cynical nature to them sometimes that can be refreshing in a way. So that's why I would pair it with coffee. And I think they have like a very cool exterior, but inwardly they tend to care a lot. At least the healthy ones do. So I have an INTJ brother. Our relationship, I think, is a lot of fun because I just trust him a lot in that I know that he has things under control when it comes to finances. And he's just very technical and able to strategize really incredibly. Yeah, there's just like a safety that comes with that feels really grounded as well. I feel like INTJs might be the type to be very disagreeable as well. And I find that there's a strong safety in that for INFJs. It's just nice to have somebody who is like genuinely authentic. I think authenticity is a big one for INTJs as well. It just flows naturally from them and they don't really care if they're being unconventional or being weird around people. I think INFJs have a lot of comfort in that. Something that I've noticed about INTJs too, just the way that the INTJ, INFJ chemistry works, because we both have introverted intuition as our dominant function, we just kind of get each other naturally. Like there's this understanding there that's hard to articulate. Like I can tell an INTJ just like a few scattered random thoughts and they instantly know what I'm talking about. I find like a big safety in that. They just make me feel understood and seen in a way. I think that the chemistry is interesting as well because I think when you have that understanding, you can actually like bring out your inner child more. And like what I mean by that is the INFJ has introverted thinking as their child's function. And then the INTJ has introverted feeling as their child's function. I find that when you like understand somebody at the deeper levels, you can actually bring that out more. Like in my relationships with my INTJs, they tend to be actually more emotional with INFJs. And then, the INFJ gets to be a little more like cool in the sense of being intellectual, like a cold intellect. I think it's funny that INFJs are more likely to have like a very warm exterior and a cold inside. We have introverted thinking as our tertiary function. I think it's really fun to have relationships with them because we like to make the cool person warm in a way. It's a fun like dance of the inner child, I think, when you actually have one in your life. I think that's only true though if they're healthy and like want that to come forward. So I'm lucky that most of the INTJs in my life are very healthy people. The next relationship pairing that I think could pair really well with an INFJ is the ENFJ. And I actually have a lot of ENFJ friends, weirdly. When I think of ENFJs, I think their essence is very warm, like a campfire gathering. They tend to have like a core group of people that they really love and like take care of. I think they're very, very protective people and loyal as well. They're also just like kind of have this sunrise essence. Like they're just so bright and they light up a room kind of feeling. My sister is an ENFJ. We have a really good relationship when it comes to being able to have like a deep talk. I think I can tell her anything and she'll pretty much pick it up, understand what I'm saying. And I think like that's really essential for INFJs. They also allow the INFJ to be social and like have a group of people that are relatively similar to them. So it's like easy to get along with a group of ENFJ friends. Yeah, I think campfire gathering is kind of the feel that I get from them. Potential trouble spots though for ENFJs is just authenticity. I find that they tend to be too loyal sometimes, so they people please to a degree that might make the INFJ feel a little nervous because we're very sensitive and we like pick up on people being dishonest, and that can be really hard on us. So, like for my sister, I tend to pay attention to her intentions most of all. It's like I know that she just wants harmony, and that's what she cares the most about. So I just really try to pay attention to that aspect of her. I think ENFJs also, they care a lot about INFJs. They tend to be very protective of us. Yeah, I have a lot of amazing ENFJ friends. So I think that's a really good pairing. So another common pairing is INFPs. I've had a couple INFPs in my life, and the essence that I think of when I think of INFPs, like a warm summer breeze, I think they just have this warmth that comes from them very naturally. They're very warm people. I think they're also kind of like the light in a dark room. They can have like a darkness to them as well and be kind of philosophically detached in a way. I think they're amazing for like emotional connections, and they can navigate emotions really well and handle like a broad depth of them. So I think INFJs feel very safe with them when it comes to actually revealing their most true, raw emotions. Authenticity and honesty, like they're just amazing, incredible when it comes to how authentic they are. I think they're also incredibly deeply caring people. They care about like their loved ones and are just incredibly loyal to them as well. I think INFPs, they can be very happy-go-lucky and funny. I think I've like laughed the most with INFPs. They have this like wit and humor to them as well that tends to be very lighthearted and I think just incredibly welcoming. Probably where there might be some issues with INFP is just that they can be more scattered and kind of in the moment. And I think INFJs tend to like things more planned out and like have control over their lives. So that kind of duo can be a little hard, I think, on INFJs. But overall, I think it's also a really good match if you're somebody who wants more of an emotional connection. The next relationship is the INFJ and ENFP relationship. And this one is harped on quite a bit in the MBTI community as like the best match for an INFJ. And I've had quite a number of ENFP friends. I feel like this is something that we're just like a magnet to them. The reason for that is because I think ENFPs, their cognitive stack is like the opposite of an INFJ. They're kind of like the inside out version of us in a way. We just work really well for that reason. It is like the epitome of an opposites attract type of relationship that's super compatible. When I think of the essence of an ENFP, I think of like a firework. Like they have sparkler energy, and I think it's also like kind of like almost like a kaleidoscope of colors. Like they're just colorful people, I would say. My youngest brother is an ENFP. His energy is just all over the place, I feel, when it comes to creativity. He is like the most creative person I know. Growing up, he always had projects around the house and it was so easy for him to come up with ideas. That's like a really good creative match for an INFJ. And if you're like a creative individual, especially, then that might be a really good partnership. One area where it might be kind of troublesome would be depth. I think with a lot of my ENFP friends, I don't know that I ever necessarily have deep talk with them. It's mostly creative talk that's kind of all over the place. Yeah, so I don't know if there's like a satisfying depth to that type of relationship dynamic, but I think it's a really good pairing. My brothers, I have an INTJ brother and then an ENFP brother. And I think that dynamic is just so fun to be around. Like I think ENFPs get INTJs out of their shell, and then I think INTJs give ENFPs some groundedness and like stability in a way, that like a structured order. And so it's like a really good pairing. I think my brothers were always getting in trouble growing up with their inventions and weird things that they would do. Yeah, I think that's like a really fun dynamic to have. The next one is the INFJ relationship. And I haven't had a very close INFJ in a very long time. I think the last one was my roommate in college, and she was an INFJ. I think this relationship is very compatible. INFJs, when I think of our essence, I think we're a good book, like a library. We're like a hidden forest as well. I think we're kind of secretive and private, but there's like a lot to us. Something like a cool mist. Like there's a coolness about us that I think is very calming. I think INFJs are a weird mix of light and dark as well. I don't know that I'm like cool or warm. I was thinking about this earlier in the week because when it comes to essences, I think a lot of people are like obviously warm or like obviously cool, but like cool in a refreshing way. I think INFJs are both. Like I don't know. Some people perceive me as pretty cool and some perceive me as being very warm in nature. When it comes to INFJ relationships, they bring out both sides of us in a way that's really calming and like peaceful. I think with that roommate, we had a comfortable quietness about us, and we just really got each other. We had very similar hobbies as well. Like we were both into photography and writing and reading, and she was a really good one for college because we both studied a lot, so that was really helpful. I think where it could potentially be not that great of a partnership is if you want to get out more and be more extroverted. Like I think it can be a kind of isolating relationship. I think tend to land more on the extroverted end of the spectrum. I think I'm like maybe 60% introvert. So I actually really like people. I can be very awkward in the beginning and take a while to open up. I think it's good to get out there more. So yeah, I think INFJ relationships might have that imbalance in that you might just be a little too indoorsy. Overall, I think it's a really compatible match. Like that person will really understand you. Another really compatible pairing, I think, is the INTP INFJ relationship. I honestly don't have a whole lot to say on this one because it's been a really long time since I've had a close INTP. I think engineering school had a lot of these personality types, but I just didn't really connect with a lot of them. I think they tend to be very introverted, but I have had like a couple that I thought were just like incredible people. Something interesting, I think, as somebody who is both a thinker and a feeler. Like I have both like an emotional side and this very intellectual explorative side. Weirdly, when I have these intellectual connections, I think that we are actually more emotionally connected to these people. Like I feel like you warm up to that. Like you start out with the intellect and then you move into the heart space. I think this can be like a really compatible relationship and that it allows you to grow in those ways. Unfortunately, it's just been a really long time, but I hear that this is a really great pairing. So yeah, I wouldn't rule it out. The last relationship pairing that I wanted to look at is potentially like a more challenging one for the INFJ. And I would say any extroverted sensor might be more difficult for INFJs. I think the reason is because we can be very private and we take some reading into. And I think extroverted sensors tend to take things at face value more often. And so there just tends to be a lot of misunderstandings at least in the beginning stages of any relationship. I would say when they're more healthy and like want to get to know you, they can be more open to like exploring who you are. The last relationship I wanted to look at was ESTJs. This is like the polar opposite to our personality type. I've had a few relationships with ESTJs. Like I mostly come across them, I think, in the corporate world, or at least I tend to come across that archetype of a person in the corporate world more often. Like the essence of an ESTJ, I think, is like a grounded rock. Like this type of dynamic, I think, is very practical and they can help INFJs get out of their heads more and just like into the grounded world. I definitely think it would be more of a challenging one. In these types of relationships, I generally walk away feeling like not understood in a way. There's just something that's kind of lacking in the dynamic that's hard to articulate. ESTJs have inferior introverted feeling, so they have a harder time like tapping into like their core selves, I think, and like their core values, their like authentic place of the heart. So it's kind of strange when I talk to them because we can be talking about similar interests like psychology or maybe something like really dark from their past. But for some reason, there's this substance that's kind of lacking there. It's really hard to describe too, because you would think that if we have similar interests that there would be a connection. But there's this like soulful kind of emotionality that tends to be lacking. So it's hard to explain, but I generally walk away kind of feeling more misunderstood than known by them. I think it can be overcome potentially if that person wants to like grow in that area, or if the INFJ also wants to grow and like becoming more grounded. But I think overall it tends to be a more challenging dynamic for us. Anyway, that is all that I have for relationship pairings. I think there's a lot of others that could work too. Like my parents, I think my dad is an ISTJ and my mom is an ISFJ. And they also just like have a really good relationship with me. I think we tend to prefer intuitive types because we're just very like mind-centered people. We like getting into like the depths of conversation in a very theoretical way. I think any relationship can work. I think the main thing has to do with like just that essence of things that you can't really describe. I've met so many people that I don't know their personalities, and it's just like there's something about you that I find really attractive, and I can't put it to words, but it might just be your overall essence. Yeah, I wouldn't think too much about it. I think a lot of times people overthink the personality thing, but it is helpful when it comes to trying to find people in your lives that will connect well. Yeah, let me know your thoughts. I don't know that I touched on everything, or I may have inaccurately represented your personality type. So I am open to feedback and interested in what your guys' thoughts are on what you think is the most compatible relationship type for the INFJ. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you all next time.